Hello, this is a short video designed to introduce you to the electric pottery kiln. Before commencing firing, make sure you're familiar with all manuals associated with the kiln. That is the kiln controller and the vent system. The electric pottery kiln is designed to fire to temperatures as high as 1300 degrees Celsius. It is a metal box lined with high temperature refractory materials. Some kilns are lined with brick and some with what is known as a ceramic fibre. Within the box we have the heating elements powered by electricity. These elements are always found on the sides of the kiln, but in some kilns they are found on the door and in other kilns even on the floor. It is important to look after your electric elements. You will notice here what we call bungs. These are designed to allow vapours and steam to escape from the kiln. There are bungs on the door and bungs at the top of your kiln. The other parts of the kiln are temperature controller, the plug-in power source and the ventilation system. We then come to the kiln furniture. You have high temperature ceramic shelves on which you place the pottery items, and you have pillars or props of varying sizes. This is how you fit all the ware into the kiln, by stacking shelf with prop, shelf with prop. Right, we're ready to load the kiln. Your locking system of your kiln, which you winds and unlocks to open the kiln. Please protect the delicate bricks of your kiln from damage by placing a shelf at the base of your kiln, unless of course there is an element on the base. Then you would prop that bottom shelf. You start from the back of the kiln, fill, front, and then stack shelves again. It is inherently more stable to pack your kiln with 3 props instead of 4. So we place them in the kiln carefully towards the edges to allow room for the work. We select the ware according to height. We try and pack so that most of the work on each shelf is of a similar height and allows room above for heat and air to circulate. In a bisque firing, that is a firing with no glaze, we can pack the work touching tightly together. We fill the shelf with the work before we put the next shelf on. When you're lifting shelves, it's very important to use your core and carefully place the shelf on top of the props with your hands out of the way. For the second shelf, we would then make sure that when we take our props, they are placed on top of the props underneath. This makes the shelving more stable. We have also ensured that the height of the props is suitable for the height of the wares we are placing in the kiln. And so continuing on to fill the shelf before placing your next shelf on top. Remember, use your core. We can continue right up to the ceiling of the kiln
allowing about a 4 centimetre gap from the top. Very importantly, we make sure that we don't stack ware too close to our thermocouple. This is where the controller reads temperature from, within the kiln, and so we want to ensure that it accurately reflects the air temperature within the kiln and is not damaged in any way. It's important to remember that there are different methods applied when you pack a glaze kiln. Firstly, the ware must not touch each other, as glaze is liquid, and then when it was fired they would stick together. Secondly, you have to ensure that the item you are packing in the kiln with the glaze on it has no glaze at the base. Whoops, this one does. So let's sponge it off with a slightly damp sponge and take it at least a couple of millimetres up from the base to allow for any glaze that might run. You can also be extra careful and place your item on a kiln stilt. Therefore, the base does not come in contact with the shelf. If that happens, you might run into this problem: a damaged shelf. See here how the glaze has adhered to the shelf. It doesn't mean the shelf is totally ruined, but it needs a lot of work. You would have to chip this off and reapply your shelf wash. And we will continue packing, always leaving space around and making sure no glaze comes in contact with the shelves or other ware. Shelf wash can also be applied to your shelves. This can be purchased from any ceramic supplier and it helps protect your shelves further. Once your kiln is fully packed, you may close the door and lock it securely. Ensure your safety door switch is also engaged properly. Around the side of your kiln is your digital controller. This is programmed to run the firing cycle of your kiln so that it switches on and switches off automatically. Once you've switched your kiln on, listen for the kiln clunking on, buzzing, clunking off. This means the elements are heating up slowly. For a bisque firing, you leave the bungs out from 0 degrees to 300 degrees Celsius. Use heat-proof gloves to place the bungs into the slots, door and top, and never look into a red hot kiln as you can damage your eyes. Cooling the kiln. A firing takes almost as long to cool as it did to reach temperature. Do not open a kiln until it is 200 degrees centigrade or less, and then only just crack the door, let it cool a few hours until it is between 80 degrees to 60 degrees or less. Never fire a kiln overnight or rely on a controller you have never used. The first initial firing
should always be supervised to check the kiln is functioning properly. If you're in doubt about when the kiln was last used or whether it is functioning properly, call a qualified kiln repairer to check that the kiln is operational.